I remember the chill in Cheryl's voice when she looked me dead in the eye and said, "I consider this disloyal," her words slicing through the silence from behind her massive mahogany desk. She wasn't just upset, she was cold and deliberate. "After everything Harbor Point Communications has done for you," she added, like a dagger. I sat across from her, gripping my purse tighter than I meant to, just trying to keep my hands from trembling. The initial shock of being summoned to her office at 8 a.m. on a random Tuesday had faded, and now there was a solid, aching weight sitting in my gut. "Cheryl," I started, but she shut me down before I could finish. No, her voice was sharp, her perfectly manicured finger tapping on a printed email like it was evidence in a trial. "Don't even try to deny it. I know you interviewed with North Bay Solutions last Thursday." She gave a pointed look. "You told us you had a dentist appointment, if I recall." "My name's Morgan Blake. I'm 32 and I've poured 5 solid years of my career into Harbor Point Communications, right here in Spokane, Washington. In that time, I've tripled the number of clients I handle, brought in millions of dollars in revenue, and earned the trust of every top-tier account on our books. But apparently, none of that counted anymore. Security will escort you to your desk. You can gather your things, but your access to the building is revoked immediately." She pushed my company ID across the desk with an expression that didn't waver. "I've already shut down your email," she added, emotionless. It felt like fire in my chest, this quiet, simmering injustice. 2 years. 2 years in a row I'd come into this same office, dressed sharp and prepared, laying out reports, salary benchmarks, and clear evidence that I'd earned a raise. And 3 years in a row I got the same line, tough budget, even as Cheryl bragged about record profits at the quarterly meetings. I exhaled slowly, stood up, and straightened my blazer. "I understand." She seemed almost surprised that I wasn't crying. Maybe she expected begging. But instead, I calmly reached out to shake her hand. "I wish you and Harbor Point all the best," I said, keeping my voice level even though I was spinning inside. She hesitated before taking my hand, her expression flickering with what looked like confusion. Back at my desk, a security guard stood awkwardly nearby while I packed up 6 years' worth of memories, family photos, desk plants, personal files, into a single cardboard box. A few coworkers glanced over with worried looks, but I smiled back at them to let them know it was okay. No outbursts. No drama. Just quiet dignity. As I stepped out through the building's glass doors one last time, the April sun warmed my face. That's when it hit me. Cheryl thought she was punishing me. But she couldn't have been more wrong. My phone buzzed as I loaded the box into my trunk. A message from Grant Lawson, CEO of North Bay Solutions. "Can we move our final discussion to today? 1 p.m.? I smiled. Cheryl had no idea what was coming. It's strange how 6 years of your life can be reduced to one cardboard box. Driving away from Harbor Point with my past packed in the trunk, I couldn't help thinking back on how it all began. I'd come on board fresh out of grad school, hungry to prove myself. Even though I had a marketing degree from Washington State University, I started out doing the grunt work, grabbing coffee, taking meeting notes. But I hustled. I stayed late. Took on the hard projects nobody else wanted. I built real relationships with clients other reps had written off as too difficult. 2 years in, I was trusted with our mid-tier accounts. By year 4, I landed North Bay Solutions, our biggest client, making up nearly 40% of the company's revenue. Grant Lawson, their CEO, personally asked for me to handle their account after I stepped up during a major crisis. Their previous rep had dropped the ball and I caught it. "You're the only one who seems to know what we need before we say it," he once told me. After that, the partnership grew stronger. North Bay renewed their contract and doubled their marketing budget. Back then, Cheryl was all smiles. "This is the kind of initiative we like to see," she said. But somehow that praise never showed up on my paycheck. I made my first raise request not long after that win. I came prepared with charts, revenue numbers, hard data. "It's just not in the budget this year," Cheryl told me, with a look that seemed more rehearsed than remorseful. "But your contributions are appreciated." I let it go. The economy was shaky and I figured I still had time to build my case. The following year, I brought in 3 major new accounts and won an award for a campaign I'd led. Same result. "Next year will be better," Cheryl said. "We just need to be cautious a little longer." Meanwhile, she rolled up in a brand new luxury SUV and the company expanded, leasing an entire new floor. Still, I stayed loyal. I thought hard work would eventually speak for itself. But then came the third rejection. That one hit harder. It came right after I'd renegotiated North Bay's deal, boosting its value by 50%. Your performance is outstanding, Cheryl told me. But this year we're focusing on infrastructure. Maybe this summer we can revisit. Something cracked in me after that. That night, I dusted off my resume for the first time in 5 years. I didn't update my resume out of spite or to get even. It was a matter of self-respect. I'd spent too long accepting empty promises and getting brushed off. I just hadn't planned on Cheryl catching wind of my job hunt before I was ready to give notice. At home, I placed the cardboard box on the kitchen counter and stared at it for a long moment. That's when the reality really sank in. I wasn't just between meetings. I wasn't just taking a long lunch. I was unemployed. The thought hit me like a ton of bricks, making it hard to catch my breath. My phone rang and Tessa's name popped up. She's my best friend. I just heard, she said right away. Thomas texted me. Are you okay? Thomas, he's Tessa's boyfriend and Harbor Point's IT guy. So yeah, the news traveled fast. I'm still processing, I admitted, sitting down heavily on one of the kitchen stools. It all happened so fast. This is so messed up, Tessa said, her voice rising with anger. Everyone knows you're the reason North Bay stuck with Harbor Point as long as they did. She didn't stop there. Cheryl's just threatened because you're better at the job than she ever was. And honestly, there was some truth to that. Back before she became a manager, Cheryl had been the company's star account exec. A lot of us figured she missed being in the spotlight, missed the client attention, so much so that she'd often jump into my North Bay meetings for no reason at all. The worst part is how she did it, I said, the anger rising in my throat. Like I betrayed her just by exploring other options after being shut down for 3 years straight. Tessa didn't hesitate. It's her loss. And honestly, Morgan, this might be the best thing to happen to you. She was right. I knew it. I hadn't stayed at Harbor Point because it was great for my career. I stayed for the clients. For my coworkers. For loyalty. But the way they fired me, like I was some kind of thief, marched out by security, it hit hard. Before I could dwell on it much longer, my phone buzzed with a new call. Grant Lawson. Tessa, I've got to take this. It's North Bay. Go. Call me after, she said quickly and hung up. I took a deep breath and answered. Morgan, I just heard what happened at Harbor Point, Grant said right away, skipping the usual small talk. Are you available today? I'd like to move things forward sooner. My pulse quickened. Yes. I can be there at 1 p.m. like you mentioned. Great. And don't worry about what happened this morning, he said. Sometimes these moments turn out to be blessings in disguise. After we hung up, I stood there for a moment, staring at my own reflection in the kitchen window. The woman looking back wasn't broken. She was free. I showered and put on my best suit, the one I usually saved for big client pitches. As I applied my makeup, a strange sense of peace settled over me. Cheryl thought she brought me down. But maybe she'd actually opened the door I needed. Yes, the way it happened was humiliating. But it was also crystal clear. I'd given Harbor Point everything I had, my time, my energy, even my evenings and weekends. And what did I get in return? Dismissed like I didn't matter. Whatever happened next, one thing was certain. I wasn't going to pour myself into places that couldn't recognize my value. It was time to take back control. North Bay Solutions had its headquarters in a sleek glass tower downtown. They occupied the top 3 floors. Compared to Harbor Point's outdated beige walls and creaky office chairs, North Bay felt like a whole new world. Modern, open spaces, team pods, and massive windows looking out at the mountains. As the elevator climbed to the 30th floor, I mentally rehearsed what I'd say. I needed to explain why I was suddenly available, but without coming off bitter. No matter how personal it felt, this was still business. Professionalism had to lead. When the doors opened, there was Grant Lawson himself, waiting in the lobby. Morgan, he said with a warm smile, reaching out to shake my hand. Thanks for coming on short notice. Grant was in his 50s, with graying hair and a calm presence. In the 2 years I'd worked with him, he'd proven to be both sharp and fair, qualities that mattered more than ever now. Thanks for the flexibility, I replied, giving his hand a firm shake. It's been a surprising day. Let's talk in my office, he said, motioning me through the busy workspace. A few familiar faces nodded or waved as we passed. His corner office wasn't flashy like Cheryl's. It was simple, warm, and designed for real conversations, not power moves. Coffee, he offered. Yes, please. We each took a mug, and once we were settled, Grant jumped right in. I got a call from Cheryl Monroe this morning, he said. She told me you'd no longer be handling the North Bay account. That she would personally oversee things until they find someone new. I nodded, keeping my expression steady, even though the irritation was bubbling just beneath the surface. Of course she'd try to grab hold of their biggest client now. Grant leaned back slightly. What she doesn't know is we were already growing uneasy with Harbor Point. That caught me off guard. Concerned? Seriously? Our latest campaign beat projections by 26%. The numbers were excellent, Grant agreed, but that's thanks to your efforts. He set his coffee mug down and leaned in a bit. But over the past year, we've noticed a shift at Harbor Point. Responses have been slower. Quality has slipped, unless it's coming directly from you. And frankly, we've started to feel like our business just isn't a priority to them anymore. Then he dropped something I didn't expect. 3 months ago, our board recommended we start looking at other marketing agencies. I pushed back because of our relationship with you. You've always shown a deep understanding of our brand, far beyond the usual agency-client dynamic. My mind started racing. Was he saying what I thought he was saying? When you reached out to explore options with us, Grant continued, the timing couldn't have been better. He held up a finger like he wanted to make something clear. But just to be upfront, we never intended to recruit you away from Harbor Point. That's not how we do business. We were prepared to wait until you made your move on your own terms. I was going to give a formal 2 weeks' notice, I said, wanting him to know I'd handled things the right way. At least I tried to. I just needed a solid offer first. He smiled. I believe you. That kind of professionalism is part of why we're sitting here today. Cheryl's move this morning just sped things up a bit. Then he opened a folder, pulled out a document, and slid it across the desk toward me. This isn't an interview anymore, Morgan. This is a job offer. The title read, Director of Client Strategy. You be in charge of building and leading a team to manage all of our external marketing partnerships and agency relationships. I looked down at the paper and had to catch my breath. The salary figure nearly knocked the wind out of me. It was almost twice what I'd made at Harbor Point. Way more than I'd even dared to ask for in my last raise request. This is really generous, I said, still a bit stunned. Grant didn't flinch. It's the going rate for someone with your background and results. Sometimes it takes stepping away from a situation to really see your own value. That night, the offer letter sat on my kitchen table, signed, ready to hand in the next day. I'd asked Grant for the evening to go over everything, just to be thorough. We both knew what my answer would be. Still, giving a little space to big decisions is a habit I like to keep. All afternoon, my phone buzzed nonstop, texts from old coworkers. Word about my firing had made its way around, along with whispers that I'd met with North Bay. I replied to a few people I trusted, but I steered clear of any gossip. That wasn't my style. Then a message came in from Thomas. Cheryl called an emergency meeting after you left, he wrote. Told everyone you were let go for breach of company loyalty. She said we should all remember that Harbor Point rewards loyalty above all else. The irony practically slapped me in the face. I shook my head. Clearly, she was trying to turn me into some kind of cautionary tale. But based on what Thomas said, it sounded like the move was already starting to backfire. Another text popped up, this time from Maya at the front desk. She's been locked in her office making nonstop calls all afternoon. Looks stressed. I think she's panicking about North Bay. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. There wasn't any satisfaction in watching Cheryl scramble. Just a clear, steady feeling in my chest. I'd made the right call. A company that talks about loyalty but never gives anything back in return? That's not the kind of place I'm willing to give another ounce of myself to. Then my phone rang again. Unknown number. Curious, I picked up. Morgan Blake? A woman asked. Speaking. This is Janet Cole. I serve on the board at Harbor Point Communications. And just like that, my stomach tightened. It's not every day a board member gets involved in a situation like this. They usually stay far away from employee matters. I understand there was an incident today regarding your employment, Janet Cole said over the phone. I'd like to meet with you tomorrow to talk about it. So that was it. Cheryl had fired me, one of the company's top performers, without running it past the board. And now with North Bay potentially walking away, they were in full damage control mode. I appreciate the professionalism, Ms. Winters, I said, keeping my tone respectful. But I've already accepted another position. There was a pause. May I ask where? I don't think it would be appropriate to share that at this time. Another pause, this one longer. Morgan, if this is about compensation, I'm sure we can revisit that conversation. The board values the contributions you've made to Harbor Point. The irony was thick. 2 years of documented, well-prepared raise requests, every single one denied, and now suddenly I was valued. It's not just about money, I said, being as honest as I could while still keeping it professional. It's about respect. About recognizing someone's worth before they've got one foot out the door. I really think we should discuss this face to face, she said. Would tomorrow morning work? I considered it. I had no intention of going back, but there was something to be said for seeing things through. Foreclosure. All right. I can meet at 9 a.m., I agreed. But just to be clear, I've already signed an employment contract elsewhere. I'm not coming to negotiate a return. Understood, Janet said, though her tone told me she wasn't entirely convinced. We'll see you at the office. After the call ended, I poured myself a glass of wine and stepped out onto the balcony. The evening was cool, crisp, the kind of spring night where the city lights start to sparkle against the sky. I didn't know exactly how the next morning would go, but I knew it needed to happen. Not just for my sake, but as a way to speak some truth into a system that needed to hear it. Maybe it would help the folks I was leaving behind. My phone buzzed. New email. Subject, welcome to the team. It was from Grant Lawson. No matter what came of the meeting tomorrow, I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't looking back. Walking into Harbor Point as a visitor the next morning felt surreal. Maya, the receptionist, looked stunned when she saw me. Her usual smile flickered. Morgan? You're here to meet with Ms. Winters. That's right, I said, signing the visitor log. It was another strange moment in a week full of them. I'll let her know you've arrived, Maya said, then leaned in and dropped her voice. For what it's worth, everyone's been saying how wrong this was. You were the best of us. Her words touched me more than I expected. Thank you, Maya. In the elevator up to the conference room, I took a breath and found my center. I was wearing a navy suit. Not to impress anyone, but to remind myself and everyone else that I wasn't here as some disgraced employee. I was an equal. Janet was already waiting when I arrived. A slim folder sat in front of her on the table. She looked to be in her 50s with neatly cut silver hair and the kind of composed confidence that only comes from decades of making big decisions. Ms. Walker, thank you for coming, she said, rising to shake my hand. Please have a seat. I glanced around, half expecting Cheryl to walk in too. But when Janet shut the door behind us, I realized this would be a private conversation. I've reviewed your personnel file, she began, flipping open the folder. 5 years of excellent reviews, steady growth in your portfolio, and 2 formal compensation requests, all of which were denied. She looked up. I wasn't aware of that history. That surprised me. I'd always assumed the board had oversight on raises. For major changes, yes, she said. But day-to-day salary decisions fall under management's discretion. Her voice stayed even, but I could hear something else underneath it, disapproval maybe. It appears Cheryl has been operating with a great deal of independence. She flipped a few pages. What I don't see, she continued, is any documentation supporting your termination. There's no policy that says employees can't interview elsewhere. I kept my voice steady. The word she used was disloyal. Janet's brow lifted slightly. An interesting word choice considering the circumstances. She closed the folder and folded her hands. Ms. Walker, I'll be direct. The board would like to offer you reinstatement at the compensation level you requested in your most recent review, plus an additional 15%. We'd also like to promote you to senior account director. It was more than Cheryl had ever offered. More than I thought I'd ever see from Harbor Point. But it came too late. That's a generous offer, I said, keeping my tone even. But as I mentioned on the phone, I've already accepted another role. Janet tilted her head slightly. At North Bay Solutions, she said, not asking. I didn't confirm or deny. Some things were better left where they were. My new position starts Monday. She watched me for a moment. Cheryl is concerned that North Bay might reconsider their relationship with Harbor Point now that you're gone. And there it was, the real reason for all of this. They weren't worried about me. They were worried about the client. That's a question for North Bay, I replied, choosing my words carefully. Janet gave a small nod, seeming to respect the line I was holding. One last question, if I may. What could Harbor Point have done differently to keep you? I wasn't expecting the question, but I welcomed it. I paused for a moment, thinking it through. They could have seen my worth before I had to go find it somewhere else, I said plainly. Loyalty isn't a one-way street, Ms. Winters. Harbor Point expected full dedication while repeatedly showing me I wasn't worth investing in. That kind of imbalance doesn't last. Janet nodded slowly. A fair assessment. She stood and offered me her hand. Thank you for your honesty. Whatever you choose to do next, I wish you the very best. As I walked out of Harbor Point for the second and final time, I felt lighter than I had in years. This wasn't about getting a second chance. It was about reclaiming my story. I was leaving on my terms with my integrity, reputation, and pride intact. In a way, I'd been handed something I didn't expect: closure. By Monday morning, the nervousness and excitement had settled in together. This was it. My first official day at North Bay Solutions and the start of a new chapter. I arrived early, eager to get started. My new office, yes, an actual office with a door and windows, was already set up. Not like the tiny cubicle I'd been stuck in at Harbor Point despite all I'd done there. Grant had even arranged a welcome basket and had the tech crew make sure everything was ready. At 8 a.m., he dropped by to introduce me to the team. "Everyone, this is Morgan Blake, our new Director of Client Strategy," he said. "You probably know her from her outstanding work at Harbor Point Communications. We're lucky to have her on board now." There were smiles, handshakes, and a quick team huddle to go over priorities. And then Grant invited me into the conference room. Inside, several of North Bay's senior leaders were seated around the table. "Before you jump in," Grant said, "we wanted your insight on a key decision." The CFO spoke up. "With recent changes, we're reevaluating our partnership with Harbor Point. Their contract's up next month." The chief marketing officer added, "You know our brand and what we need. You also know what Harbor Point can deliver." I could have recommended cutting ties right then and there. I had every reason to. It would have been easy, clean, justified. But I wasn't built for revenge. That kind of thing might feel satisfying in the moment, but professionalism lasts longer. "I think we should treat Harbor Point like any other agency under review," I said calmly. "They've done strong work. But moving forward, consistency and account management will be critical." The decision came down that Wednesday at 10 a.m., exactly 1 week since Cheryl had fired me. I hadn't timed it. That's just how the chips fell after the executive team reviewed the proposals. Grant let me preview the email before it went out, though I'd formally stepped out of the decision to avoid any conflict of interest. The message was straightforward. After careful evaluation of our marketing strategy, North Bay Solutions will be transitioning our account to Meridian Creative, effective immediately. This shift supports our evolving digital priorities. Morgan Blake, our Director of Client Strategy, will manage the transition. Please have all materials transferred by end of business Friday. I imagined Cheryl reading it. The shock. The slow realization. She hadn't just lost me, she'd lost North Bay, the client that accounted for nearly 40% of Harbor Point's yearly revenue. And I'd be the one leading the transition. It was poetic justice. The best kind, unplanned, undeserved on their part, and executed with absolute professionalism. I hadn't trashed the company. I hadn't burned bridges. Harbor Point's own blind spots had done the damage. That afternoon, I got a LinkedIn connection request from Maya. It was followed by a message. "The office is chaos. Cheryl's been locked in meetings all day." 3 other account managers updated their resumes. Karma's moving fast. I didn't reply right away. There was no point in rubbing salt in the wound. Instead, I focused on my team. On building something solid, something future-facing. Because in the end, success really is the best revenge. Later, I did accept Maya's connection and sent her a quick message back. "Thank you for your kindness while I was at Harbor Point. Wishing you all the best." Taking the high road felt surprisingly good. North Bay brought challenges and growth I would have never experienced if I'd stayed stuck, waiting to be seen. Sometimes the sweetest revenge doesn't come from striking back. It comes naturally when you choose to believe in yourself even when others don't. Looking back a year later, I realized something simple and powerful. Cheryl had unknowingly handed me a gift. The push I needed to step into my worth. In trying to knock me down, she'd sent me forward. And what I found wasn't revenge at all. It was self-respect. And the courage to claim the success I'd always deserved.